Okay, so welcome everybody to the Reset to Thrive YouTube channel. And I'm so delighted to have Judith here today, who had ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, for a very long time, didn't you, Judith? So your story is going to help so many people. Can I just start by asking, what was the first indication that you weren't well?
It was one Friday afternoon at work. It was about 4 o'clock, and I suddenly felt really peculiar, really exhausted and spaced out, and just something was very wrong. And then later that night, I got a terrible headache, um, and I thought it was some kind of flu virus or something. So I was unwell all weekend, and I took the Monday off work, and I was a bit better. Went back to work. Then after another 2 or 3 days, I was unwell again. And that was a kind of cycle that I was in. So, okay for 2 or 3 days and then ill again. And then I realized there's something really wrong when I was absolutely exhausted after going up and down 2 aisles in the supermarket. I just wiped out completely.
And was that the very first time that anything had happened to you?
Yes, it seemed to come completely out of the blue.
Wow. And when was that? How long ago was that?
That was in 2001, so nearly 25 years ago.
Wow. What do you think caused did you get diagnosed as ME at the time for chronic fatigue? Would have been ME
No,
in
I had
those
to
days.
wait. Yes, it was ME. I had to wait 6 months for a diagnosis. Um, but I was told that it was a virus. Um, I hadn't had a cold or sore throat or anything like that. It was just this weird exhaustion. And I did have muscle aches as well and this terrible headache. Yes, I was told it was a virus, but looking back and based on what I know now, I can see that it was just kind of the last straw. I'd had 3 years of high stress, health and work stress, and um, I think the thing that really tipped me over was that one of my colleagues left, and instead of replacing her, they shared out her job. So I was doing my own full-time job and a third of somebody else's job, and I'd had these 3 years of big life changes and stress. Um, but I also think now that I probably grew up with a sensitive nervous system. As a child, I was often told I was being oversensitive or overthinking things or taking life too seriously. So I think I was predisposed really, and then had this perfect storm of circumstances.
So you're already activating your system naturally throughout childhood, and so obviously a predisposition that then you are more vulnerable to the system shutting down when it's tipped the scales. And as you say, it was the camel that broke the camel's back. I hear this so often about, no, there was nothing, it just came out the blue. And it does seem to come out the blue very often. But of course, you've had time to reflect and look at how your life actually was at that moment. So, how did that affect your daily life?
Well, it was just awful. It affected everything. I couldn't carry on working. I tried really hard to keep my job, but I reduced my hours, but I just couldn't do it. So I had these horrible sort of flu-like symptoms and muscle aches and this awful exhaustion that I couldn't push through. I became sensitive to chemicals and to sounds. At one stage, I was quite sensitive to light as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I lost my job. I lost my hobbies, my social life. my independence, really, and my chance to have children. So it took everything, really.
Oh. And how did that
Yeah.
affect you? Obviously, socially, not seeing anybody physically. How did it affect you emotionally?
It was very hard, because I couldn't get any help from the medical profession, really. So I felt really on my own. I was isolated because I couldn't go out very much. I mean, it did fluctuate during the illness, so at times I was able to go out, but I was still, yeah, very much alone. And it was so hard because everybody else's life seemed to be carrying on, and mine had just
Mm.
ground to a halt. And I felt so ill and had so little energy. And within a few weeks of becoming ill, I was incredibly anxious about walking. Um,
Yeah,
and my world just got smaller and smaller. I was able to
yeah.
do less and less, and it was so hard. Um,
Oh,
I was
awful.
incredibly lucky to have a supportive family and husband. My parents, after I'd been ill for about 2.5 years, they moved from the other side of the country to be near us and helped with lots of practical things. And my husband has been amazing, and he really kept me going. He was doing a very demanding job, working long hours at the time, but at weekends he really went out of his way to give me some kind of life and take me out of the
Wow.
house if I was up to it for a drive or something, just a drive around some villages or into the countryside or something.
And did you ever have to have a wheelchair or
Yes.
to go out?
Um, I resisted for, I think, 6 years. I just didn't want to have
Mm.
one because I thought that would be giving in to the illness, and I was in fighting mode trying to get rid of it. Um, but I realised that I was never going to be able to do anything if I didn't. And it was positive getting it because it enabled me to have some outings and to go shopping occasionally and to go on holiday. Um, though holidays were very much, I'd spend the first day there recovering from the journey, and then I'd try to have a small outing in the wheelchair, and then the next day I'd recover from that while my husband went and did something on his own. So I sort of had half a holiday. And
Goodness. So life, did you have any advice at that point?
I was told to focus on all the symptoms,
Blimey.
the activities, try to work out what was causing the symptoms. And so I became very anxious about activity. In fact, one of the first treatments I tried was a very rigid pacing and graded exercise program, which was just awful. Um, it was every minute of the day was accounted for, and I was severely reprimanded if I deviated from the plan at all.
Oh,
And
no.
I did it for 2 months, and it made me so ill. My husband had to carry me up the stairs. I just couldn't get up the stairs.
Oh, how
So that
awful.
was really awful. But that made me so focused on linking activity to the crashes. So I became very fearful of
And
activity.
terrified of coming off your miniature line that you'd been given for pacing.
Yes, it
I
was very
know
stressful.
I've worked with children that were only allowed to get out of bed and be put on the sofa to watch 5 minutes of television and be put back in bed. Otherwise, they were told that they were going to pay for it. It's awful, isn't it? So, did you try any other treatments apart
I
from the
tried lots of
pacing?
Yes, I tried lots of alternative treatments. I kept asking my doctor if I could be referred to someone, and because I thought, there must be someone. He just kept saying there wasn't anyone. But he did refer me to a consultant physician who was lovely, but he just said, it's not in our training, and you'd be better off trying alternative therapies. So I was lucky to be in a position to do that. So I tried a whole load of different therapies and all the usual diets and a whole load of supplements. But they either only helped a tiny bit, or they didn't help at all, or they made me worse. I did also try a couple of the early brain retraining programs, I think in 2007 and 2011, but they didn't work for me at all, particularly the second one, which is very complicated. I could only ever do the techniques for 3 days, and then I'd end up in bed, and I didn't know what was happening, whether I'd got a virus or what it was, and I didn't know what to do about that. There was no kind of explanation of what to do about it. So I just cut myself off completely from the ME world. It was the only way I could cope with it, and I seemed to do better when I was just managing things in my own way.
Yeah. So what was your first impression of how did you find the Reset to Thrive? Did you read the book?
I did. I came across a mention of the book completely by chance. I think
Ah,
it was on a Facebook page. So I ordered it, and it was so unlike anything I'd come across before. It was so positive, and just as soon as I started reading it, I became open to the possibility that things could be different. I'm not sure I believed I could recover at that stage, but definitely thought this is different.
that's amazing. So how did you start to turn things around? Do you remember, was there anything in particular about the book and the program, the book Breaking Free, or the program that resonated, that kick-started you?
There are a few things. So first of all, it was believing that things could be different, because um, back in, I think it was 2007, I'd been referred to a specialist CFS clinic, and they told me categorically that there would never be a cure and that I would never get better. And before that, I'd already been told that the longer you were ill, the less likely you were to
Yeah,
recover.
yeah.
So that was just awful. I mean, it was a real low point, that was. But yeah, so then I changed, yeah, to believing that actually maybe things can be different. So that was my
Wow.
starting point. And then there are a few things that really appealed to me in your program, particularly the celebrating and being excited about what you can do. So I switched my focus. So I'd had all this focus on the symptoms and everything going wrong, and could I do this if I went somewhere? How far would I have to walk? And all this kind of micromanaging. And instead,
Absolutely.
it just never occurred to me to focus on what I could do. And I started doing that, and started just really slowly. I mean, I did go very, very slowly. Started challenging my triggers. My main one was walking, and I'd do a tiny walk, and then I'd get home and I'd say, "Yes, I did it." Just I
Yes.
liked being excited about it, and it was exciting because for years I'd try to go for little walks, and I'd count steps and do 100 steps or something, and I couldn't do it every day, and I'd be worried about whether I'd have enough energy to make food. And the
Exactly.
times when I didn't have enough energy, there was a
Exactly.
period, I think for 2.5 months, I was pretty much bedbound and so on. So I've had a lot of ups and downs, but this was just such a whole new approach. So it's all quite counterintuitive, and I stopped as much as possible, stopped talking about the symptoms, and you suggest that we reframe them as sensations, and that makes
Yeah.
them less scary.
Yeah.
So that appealed as well. So I just started doing those things consistently in a small way. And the other really important thing for me was when I did get symptom flares. I mean, obviously, the brain isn't going to let you suddenly start changing your behavior without commenting on it. So I did did get what some people call post-exertional malaise. And then the key to that was to remain calm and detach myself from it, and make my brain and my malfunctioning nervous system feel safer that way. So
I
that was
know.
how I started
I
making
think
progress.
my abiding memory of you is, I spoke with you quite early on, um, when you joined the program, and just your ability to express joy and express how incredible it is when I notice that I can do something was wonderful. And actually, in the second edition, I've emphasized that because there's a reason the brain needs to get the message, and you just did it so brilliantly. Even though you'd had so many years of being told, the complete reverse, once you clicked that this is what makes the difference, you really committed to it, and you were so joyful. I can remember you going out into your garden one day and just being so delighted that you were sitting in your garden. And it's those little wins, those little things that is drip, 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 getting the message, getting the message. So amazing, so amazing. But of course, in the process of recovery, whether it's from chronic fatigue or any other illness, we do get setbacks. And how did you deal with that? Because obviously, previously, you were terrified about doing anything in case it caused a crash. How did you deal
Yeah.
with the setbacks once you learnt what to do?
Well, it certainly wasn't easy at first,
No.
but you have to do it. You can't make progress without challenging your triggers. And actually, when you do get flare-ups of symptoms, that's just the best time to retrain your system,
Brilliant.
by remaining as calm as you can. And it isn't easy at first, but it does get easier with time. I remember one of my real aha moments was when I increased my walking to a mile. I got to doing that far because I'd done really short walks and I'd done them a few times, then I added on a bit and then done that a few times and so on. And I built up to a mile. And about 2 hours after I got home, I had such a big flare of symptoms. I felt so terrible. I think it was the day of one of the community chats as well. I just felt too ill to attend that.
Mm.
But by practicing the emotional detachment, within less than 24 hours, I was out walking again. Not quite as far,
Wow.
but that level of symptoms would have taken me at least a week to recover from before I
Wow.
raced, being practically bedbound with it. So that was a real
Amazing.
breakthrough moment.
So, how is your life now compared to what it was?
Well, it couldn't be more different, really. So
Yay.
it's probably 14 months, I think, since I used the wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
Um, and another thing was we bought one of those bar type stools for the kitchen so that I could sit down to cook and wash up and so on because I couldn't stand. So, and I can't remember the last time I needed to sit down.
Wow.
I can go out every day. I can walk full miles now. I can push a trolley around the supermarket, just do normal things. I can go shopping in town. In the autumn, I spent a day at a shopping centre, which is, yeah,
Wow.
not the best place for people with CFS because of all the noise and the bright lights and everything, but I coped really well with that. Can't say I particularly enjoyed it, but yeah, I coped really well. And I've been for lovely walks. I love going for walks that would be totally inaccessible to a wheelchair. So through muddy fields and forests. I've been to an arboretum. been to stately homes and visited gardens. And in the last autumn, I did a whole holiday on foot, no wheelchair, for the first time in maybe
Amazing.
20 years. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Hi, fantastic. 25 years and look at you now. Amazing. So what would you
It's
say
incredible.
to anybody else who has chronic fatigue, ME, or long COVID that can help them?
I would say, please don't ever give up or lose hope. Um, when I became ill, there really wasn't any help, but there's so much help now, and there's
Yeah.
so much you can do. It's really empowering. You don't have to think you need to wait for a drug or some medical treatment to be developed, because there's so much you can do yourself, and that's just, it's such a good feeling when you have that power, and you when you overcome
Oh,
things that you're afraid of doing, it feels so good. It really
so
does.
good. It's so good, isn't it, to have self-agency back and
Absolutely.
to feel like I'm back. You know, how wonderful is that? How empowering and joyful. And
Yeah.
do you still celebrate going out for walks and doing everything that's
Yes, I did this morning. I
still,
went for a walk and I came back and yes, I
yeah,
did.
absolutely,
and I
absolutely.
do it mid-walk as well, and discreetly if there are people around. But yes,
Absolutely. And I would definitely say to, obviously my book was because we are told in the medical world there is no cure, and in the medical world there isn't a magic pill. Um, but that doesn't mean that you can't recover. So once you know how the brain works, once you know how the body's functioning, then when we work with the body and we work with the brain, because the brain needs to understand what's happening and what it needs to be doing. So you learned so many things. And literally, you tipped it on its head. And I think I say in the book, you're going to do completely counterintuitive and literally turn it on its head and do the opposite of what feels normal when you're ill. But of course, that's what we need to do to get out the sickness cycle. So you are
absolutely. I
just
have no,
an amazing inspiration. I find you so inspirational. And I'm sure anybody watching today will be so inspired because it doesn't matter how long you've had it. And it doesn't matter if you've been housebound or bedbound. It is more to do with what do I need to do to get better? What, you know,
absolutely.
what is my focus and what is the brain and the body needing for it to know that you're safe to heal? Because that's the whole point. You were stuck in the sickness cycle because the body was getting the messages that it's not safe to heal. And when we do all this celebratory and everything else, it's actually changing how the brain is making connections. And that enables you then. And what was so brilliant about you is that you were prepared to expose yourself to the triggers. And then, as you say, when you notice that you can overcome them, that is so huge. That's so exciting and empowering. So I just think you're wonderful, wonderful. And I really wish everybody who's watching this today is inspired because, if you can do it, Judith, anybody else can do it too. And what a wonderful message to pass on to other people. Thank you so, so much. And if I could just finish with mentioning when you said hope, actually, in the second edition of the book, I did lots and lots of extra research. And there is so much evidence that hope, reassurance, and an expectation of recovery massively impacts on your ability to recover. So you have given people hope, you've given them a role model, and you've given them the reassurance that you can. And thank you so, so much. Thank you, Judith. So,
Thank you.
oh, it's a pleasure.
Your book literally changed my life.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's, the more we can let people know that actually there is a way to get better, and it isn't a drug. Did you take any drugs when you were, we used to call them medicine. You never were given any medication?
I was offered a low dose of antidepressants to help with sleep and so on. But I was told it would probably make me feel groggy, and I thought, I already feel groggy. Pretty
Yeah,
awful. I don't want to take something that will potentially make me
yeah,
feel worse.
yeah. Thank you so much, Judith. It's
You're
been
very
an
welcome.
absolute joy to listen to your story. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.